It's Senior Bowl week. Excuse me. What is notable about what the 49ers are looking at in Mobile, Alabama? I'm still sick trying to get over whatever I got going on right now. My voice is going to make it through today's podcast, though. So let's get in the chat. This is your show. Let's let the listeners carry this one for myself and Eric Crocker on this episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all the everydayers out there. See you jumping in the live chat already. We thank you for it. And if you're listening to us in your car on the way to work Friday morning, we love you too. Welcome to the new listeners. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Croc, I want to start with a question because we obviously are looking at the trenches. Every prospect we've broken down so far for the 2025 NFL draft has been an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman. Kyle Shanahan, 49ers, Tariq Ahmad, RJ Gillen, 49ers staff, it's all at the Senior Bowl. They're meeting with a lot of linemen, right? This is a draft we've talked about. It has to be about the players up front on both sides of the football. But I was asked by some listeners this week a good question, because we do always preach best player available when it comes to the NFL draft. Like, ideally, you're going best player available every single year. And I always bring up the idea of, okay, so you're trying to draft starters in the first round, right? Or the first 3 rounds or so. You're getting starter players in the round. Day 3, you're kind of getting backups and special teamers and those kind of things. Ideally, that's kind of how it goes. So if you draft for 7 straight years and you stock your football team with 21 draft picks and you go for need and not best player available, that's almost your entire starting group of offensive and defensive players that you're worse at every spot now because you were drafting for need instead of the best player available for those 21 draft picks. So that's, and once you start to, every now and again, it might not hurt you too bad, but in the long run, if you don't get the best player at that spot, you're going to have a worse football team. But at the same time, some positions are more valuable than others. So, Croc, I'm going to pose the question to you. And I thought about this a little bit since the question was posed to me. What happens when the 49ers are on the clock at pick 11 and the draft board's sitting there staring you in the face, and the top 3 players are a running back, a safety, and a tight end?
Go with the tight end.
Okay.
I may go with the safety, right? Now, listen, there's not a lot of players I would have taken over Minkah Fitzpatrick and Derwin James when they were coming out. And when you're a player of that caliber, man, you just impact the game in so many different ways. Especially, Minkah, we've seen him be first-team All-Pro or second-team All-Pro and all that. But even Derwin James, remember his rookie year, 49ers playing against the then San Diego Chargers, and he's getting a sack, and then he's getting an interception, and he's knocking balls down, and he tips the ball at the line of scrimmage, and the Chargers beat the mighty C.J. Beathard-led 49ers in the game. We've come a long way since then, but just watching a player that impacts the game in so many different ways, and you're able to move him. I always love those kind of players. So not saying that I would take that player over an edge rusher, because I do think it's just harder to find edge rushers. But when you have a player that you feel is that special on the back end and it's a safety, I think you got to take that. You got to take that guy, because he doesn't just impact the game like a pass rusher. Okay, gets after the quarterback, cool. But that guy with just unique instincts and skill set. How much does Kyle Hamilton? And I didn't think Kyle Hamilton was those guys, but he's kind of turned out to be like those guys. Mm-hmm. How much does he impact the games for the Baltimore Ravens? He's terrific.
Absolutely. Certainly more valuable than, if you force a defensive lineman and they turn out to be Solomon Thomas or Javon Kinlaw. So and it's a good lesson. And yeah, I thought that when I was asked that question, I thought exactly of the 2018 draft as well. Do you take Mike McGlinchey because you need an offensive tackle that fits your system, or do you take Minkah Fitzpatrick, right? Or Derwin James? And Shadow 49ers pick was Minkah Fitzpatrick because that was my guy in that draft. Derwin James is awesome too. McGlinchey was nowhere near that area for me. And here's the second part of it. So yes and no. Like I'm still not taking a running back there. But man, Malachi Starks, we haven't done the deep dive yet on him, but I think we're going to have to. And maybe we should cluster those guys into one episode where we do Ashton Genty, Malachi Starks, and was it Tyler Warren, right? The tight end from Penn State. Maybe do all three of those guys in one episode and be like, okay, if these guys are on the board and they got a better grade than whatever offensive lineman or defensive lineman is there, do you take the best player? And so, yeah, I think, the lesson is that, yeah, if you can get a perennial all-pro safety, that's better than drafting a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman that isn't a difference maker. Clearly.
The easy, not the easy thing to do, but if it were me, right? Let's say Simmons, who I love, and we'll talk about him in a second too. Got a lot of feedback. People are like, I really agree with you guys, what you're saying about Simmons and Walker, both of those guys. But hypothetically speaking, 49ers, they want a tackle. They need a tackle. The crazy thing is, tackle is not even like the biggest need. Like it will be a big need in like a year, but like this season, it's not. And you would really genuinely be taking best player available. And it also helps that you could potentially put him at guard for a year. But let's say Simmons off the board, Campbell off the board. Those are the two guys that I've watched so far that feel, oh, these are Shanahan offensive linemen. He would love these guys. All right, but they're off the board. They were drafted in the top 10. And then the defensive lineman that you like, whether it's the kid from Michigan, the big guy in the middle, Walker, let's just say hypothetically speaking, Walker, he's not there. Some of the other edge rushers. So if you're staring right there at that big board and you see Warren, the kid out of Penn State, you see, a safety or someone that can be impactful, maybe a running back. And it's hard. It is hard to take a running back that high. But if you are going to, he better damn well be CMC and what he was for the Carolina Panthers. He better be Saquon Barkley, what he was not only for the Philadelphia Eagles now, but what he was for the New York Giants then, even though they didn't have the team around him. He better damn well be Ezekiel Elliott and what he was for the Dallas Cowboys. Off rip, a 17 or 1,600 yard rusher, led the NFL in rushing yards as a rookie. So you can get a lot of impact out of a back if he's going to be your guy. But Christian McCaffrey, he ain't going anywhere right now. So I don't see the 49ers taking running back, but man, like tight end, safety, I think you would have to go just go get a stud.
Yeah, and Malachi Starks might be the perfect fit with his range, his ability to cover, what he could be for the San Francisco 49ers defense. I can't wait to get into his tape a little bit more. I know I liked what I saw from the safety from Notre Dame as well. And, I don't think he's a first round guy.
That's Starks, right? Zero, right?
Starks is Georgia.
Okay,
Notre Dame
zero
is Watts, right?
Watts. Zero.
Yeah.
So he's number 0. I saw, shout out to our guy, Mosher. He said, what did he say? He said, oh, he's tiny. I'm like, well, I'm watching the game. Again, I don't look at guys' measurables, their height, weight, and all that. Prior to us discussing them, he doesn't look tiny. I'm like, how? What's his size? And I'm looking at him. He looks like, I don't know, 6 foot, about 200. And I think it was like 5'11", 202 or something. And he called him tiny. Like, that's not a tiny safety.
No, that's fine. I mean, Jimmy Ward was a pretty small safety, right? He was 5'11", like he was
195.
Like maybe 190. He was really slim when he came into the league. He might have got a little bit bigger, but he wasn't the biggest safety.
Do you remember when he first came in and what? If you interview, this is what I want y'all to go look at. Remember his rookie year, I think he was like number 25. He might have been the most disgusting looking player coming into the NFL. He had these huge shoulder pads his rookie year. And I mean huge. And then he had like the Pop Warner Revolution face mask. I mean, he did not care. I actually reached out to, it was so bad. I reached out to, I think it's Tremaine Brock. I'm like, hey, does Jimmy Ward just not care about how he looks on the field? He was like, bro, we be trying to tell him. Like, it looks so terrible. But he got his swag up as the years went on, and he looks great on the field now. But that might be why he looks so skinny as well, coming out of college, because he had the big old shoulder pads.
Yeah, so he's 10 pounds bigger than Jimmy Ward was, 5'11", 193. Shout out to RDC in the chat with the assist there.
The tiny is like, if you're 5'9", 190-pound safety, then all right, we could throw the tiny tag out there. But like, there were some terrific. Bob Sanders, he wasn't the biggest guy, played with big heart. He was a terrific safety in his prime. But that's why when I think of tiny is like 5'8", 5'9" safety. Like this guy was like, somebody could look up what Watts is listed at, but he wasn't listed at little, and he didn't look little when I was watching the film.
It did not look that way to me either. He looked like a guy who was just pretty standard height, 6 feet, 200. Exactly. I thought the exact same thing. I didn't watch him and be like, oh, he's really undersized for a safety. Actually, and look, maybe that makes him slide down to a place where it's easier for the 49ers to get him. I'm all about that as well. So we talked about option A and B in that scenario, Croc, but there's an option C. If, say, a running back is the top player on your board at pick number 11, and you don't want to force alignment at that spot, there's another way to go. I want to get into that option and draft strategy for the San Francisco 49ers in the 2025 draft next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Gametime. Attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. In fact, any playoff game, the atmosphere is unbelievable. I've been to a ton of baseball playoff games. It is so fun. I remember Travis Ishikawa's walk-off home run, being there in person. That sort of feeling is unbelievable. It's electric. NBA playoff games. The college basketball tournament's coming up. Those are really fun games to attend as well. You can find tickets to all of them at Gametime. And Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And we're talking sporting events, we're talking concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and fantastic deals on last-minute seats, even up to an hour after the event starts. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Croc. So you can draft a running back or a safety or a tight end if they're the best players on your board at pick 11. You can force an offensive lineman or a pass rusher at 11 if that's the way you want to go because you value that position more and it's more of a position of need for you. Or, Croc, you could trade out of there and make need meet value. And that's where I'm at right now. All these prospects we're looking at, I'm not like pounding the table for these guys to be like, dang, man, this is the guy at 11. If he's there, you got to take him. At this point, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, man, there's going to be a lot of guys from 11 to 20 that might have really similar grades. I'm probably going to be willing to pick up the phone and listen to offers and maybe move back. And then on top of that, be active to where I can attack upward as well after collecting extra picks, maybe move up from 43, maybe get 2 first-round caliber players in this draft, maybe move up from 75 in the 3rd round to get that one guy who's fallen late in the 2nd round. So don't forget there's another option, and there's the trade option. And the other thing is Mason Graham's an interesting one. We haven't done his full scouting report either, Croc. The defensive
and that's the Michigan kid, right?
Michigan. There's 2 of them because they got Mason Graham, who's the thought of to be a top 10 block of a prospect at this point, and then there's Kenneth Grant, who's the 340 pounder as well. So they're pretty stacked on the interior there. Mason Graham isn't necessarily the type, and we'll see what he does at the combine. Maybe he blows, but he might be the type of guy where some guys pass him up because they're just more physically gifted. And the Niners have an opportunity to draft him, maybe not even 11, but maybe go up a couple spots, maybe go up to 9, right? And draft him. So these teams like the Saints and the Panthers and some of the teams that are in front of the 49ers, they need draft picks, man. So like you might be able to go up and get that blue chipper that we're not really thinking about being there at 11. They might fall within range. Who knows? Maybe Abdul Carter is there for the 49ers to go up and get, in the top 7 or something like that. So go up, go back. Right now, though, man, it's looking like a lot of these prospects are going to have very similar grades. And I'm thinking trading back might be an option and then potentially moving up later to maybe solidify that one guy you didn't get. So go back and get one of these pass rushers at pick 17. And then you come back up and then get that D tackle or get that offensive tackle that's fallen down the boards as well later. So that might be the way to play it right now if I was to guess. And I think when I do my next mock draft, I think I'm going to try that technique because I do think we're going to be looking at a lot of prospects that have very similar grades in the teens.
Yeah, I think it was 2020. It was the year that Brandon Ayuk was drafted. And I actually did an exercise kind of like that. The 49ers were picking that pick 13. Didn't quite love the guys that were available at that spot. So I traded back to pick 18. Drafted Justin Jefferson. And the crazy thing was the responses I got. Oh, how do you take him? He's just a slot. That's a terrible pick. The 49ers wouldn't like him. He's been awesome. But I do like that philosophy. And if there's any team that's willing to do it, right, trade back and then trade back up, 49ers saw them do it in 2020. Matter of fact, traded back only one spot, albeit they moved back one spot. They drafted Javon Kinlaw, then moved up higher in the first round and drafted Brandon Ayuk, which obviously has worked out much better.
One of the things I don't like about the idea of a safety at pick 11 is that I don't know if it's John Lynch with his safety background, but the 49ers have seemed to always figure out safety. And I'm just not sure, you have this opportunity to draft a difference maker at a spot that's hard to find. Safeties just aren't that hard to find. And do you give up the opportunity to get one of those other positions to get a position that you're a lot better at finding, even though we do think we need a certain thing at safety, more speed, more range out there in the middle of the field. I mean, they've brought guys off. Well, yeah, but they've brought guys off the street and we're just fine at safety. You know what I mean? They signed fine, right? But
fine. You got fine players.
If you're not fine in the offensive line or as a pass rusher, then you're sitting at home in January. You can be fine at safety and go win a Super Bowl. If you're not fine at the offensive line and the defensive line, you're sitting at home.
When you're elite at safety, it does change a lot of what you're able to do. And we're talking about impactful plays. I mean, Tayshaun Gibson, he was terrific for the 49ers, taking the ball away. He was able to do that at a high level, but he was still very, you had to use him this way. Right? Like it's like, all right, he got to use him like this. Imagine having a guy back there that not only takes the ball away, in the passing game, but man, he's all over the place. He's getting sacks. He's forcing fumbles, right? Just being a very impactful player. He can cover, like my guy Gammon says in the chat, and can cover the slot, like a guy that also gives you coverage ability, which they don't really have that kind of safety right now. Like they have guys, they've done a really good job of finding guys that they can get by with. And it's like, you know what? He does this well. All right, cool. And that's great. That's how you're supposed to draft. And that's why the 49ers find so many guys mid-round who are able to come in and play for them. But, like, who's the special guy? Who's the guy that's not a liability in any aspect of his game? And I don't even know if that guy is in this draft. But I do know, again, I haven't watched Stark's kid, but watching Watts out of Notre Dame, and I got to watch more of him, but I got to watch him in the playoffs and see how he – again, I didn't even pay attention to him until Mosher said that he was tiny. But after that, I started really watching him. Man, this guy's flying around. He's making tackles. He's doing a really good job, doing really good stuff. Man, you get a safety. Again, I don't know if that guy's in this draft. But if we find a guy that is like that, which I don't foresee we will, because if there was a Minkah Fitzpatrick or Derwin James, we would know that there's a Minkah Fitzpatrick and Derwin. I would know that right now. So I'm assuming that there isn't that guy at 11. You may not have to worry about it.
I'm seeing Starks in top 10 in mocks a lot. He's not really been talked about that much. Yeah, I've seen him around the area where the 49ers are drafted. I'm not sure if I've seen him go to the 49ers yet, but I've seen him actually just ahead of the 49ers. So, but again, we haven't gotten to the tape on him. So that'll be a fun one. And we got to do that, I think, sometime soon. While Croc looks that up, next, we got some questions here from Gammon, CSL in the chat. Some other questions to finish up today's Q&A off-season episode. 49ers, it's time to use the Senior Bowl to get back to the Super Bowl. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with PrizePicks. The best place for daily fantasy sports with over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, PrizePicks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. So here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. And if you're right, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. So player projections on PrizePicks like passing yards, rushing touchdowns. And you just go more or less. And a free pick is given away by PrizePicks for the big game. Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw for 1 yard to get that first win. So now you only need to pair that with one more correct pick, and you are cashing out. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at PrizePicks. Run your game. All right, Croc, you seeing some helium for Malachi Starks?
The first mock draft I looked up, they had him going pick 13th overall to the Miami Dolphins. 6'1", 205 pounds. So obviously we're not too far off. You're picking pick 11. It's not like that would be a reach. Now, who they had the 49ers taking, that's the one where it's like, is that a reach? Because they have the 49ers taking Walter Nolan, who we do like. But yeah, it was the Beast had him going, second round to the 49ers, not 11 overall. Now, I did say that I can't remember the exact offensive lineman that we watched that day, but I said if I didn't know any better, you'd have those flipped. Remember, I said that like Walter Nolan would be the first round guy.
I think we both like the Nolan tape more than Membo. Yeah.
Membo. Yeah, that's what Membo, who ended up being bigger than, I think he had the long arms. I think he got 34-inch exactly.
Yeah, he's got tackle arms in a guard body. Gammon says, legitimate question. 1, how many games were truly lost because of the special teams? And 2, should special teams have played that much of a factor in the win-loss column in a given season? I asked this question to Aaron Schatz, who is the godfather of the DVOA stat. And I've had him on the Peacock the Peacock and Williamson show a few times. I actually talked to him this week, but the time before he was on, I asked him about special teams and how much of a difference it makes. And basically he says, to him, if you chopped up like the DVOA numbers and you chopped it up into 8 parts, 4 of them would be offense. So 50% of how good you are as a team is offense. 3/8 is defense, and 1/8 is special teams. That's how much special teams kind of weighs. So it's about an 1/8 of the equation. Is that enough to make a difference? Sure, it is in one score games. But we've seen the 49ers have awful special teams and go win playoff games, right? So I'm not going to put a 6-win season on special teams. But would they have won 7 games without special teams? Maybe even 8? Maybe.
Yeah. So the way that we talk about it as coaches are there's 3 phases to the game. You have offense, defense, special teams. So it is a major phase in the game. But in the sense of wins and losses, a game can definitely be turned on special teams, but you should not be losing games because of special teams. Essentially what you're saying. Like your offense and defense have such a huge impact throughout games that a play or a kick should not be the issue or reason why you lose. And if it comes down to that, and I say this sometimes, if I'm putting the blame now, what kind of game is it? Is it a shootout or whatever it is? But I'm always looking at what you could do better offensively because it's such an offensive driven league. And there's so many different ways to be able to win offensively. And, the flags and everything leans towards offense. So if it's coming down to a kicker, then I'm just like, your offense probably wasn't good enough if that kicker missed and you lost the game because of that. There's probably a lot of other things, turned the ball over several times, missed throws, blown coverages on defense. I feel like there's a lot of other things you get to before it's like, this one punt return where he got 20 more yards than you expected. Like, that's why you lost. But that's the last thing people see. So then they're going to pin it on special teams.
Pharrell says, loving you guys do a Q&A. I appreciate that. We love getting in the chat and hanging out with you guys. In the off season, there's always a lot of weird small topics that we can get to. And it makes it a lot more fun to do these, once or even twice a week in the off season. Andre says, where are these T. Higgins rumors coming from? And how do y'all feel about that? I have not heard a T. Higgins rumor, Croc. Are we talking about T. Higgins to the 49ers? Have you heard this?
I have not heard that. And I don't anticipate the 49ers going after T. Higgins. When you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Ricky Pearsall, you still have Deebo Samuel, you got Jawan Jennings locked up for another season. You still got George Kittle. And then you're paying Christian McCaffrey is the highest paid running back in the league. Like, where do you how does that fit into your roster building? And if the 49ers did do that, let's say the 49ers traded for T. Higgins, I would say, what the hell is your plan? Like, what are you doing? I wouldn't be mad. I would just question it
would have made a lot of sense if you traded Brandon Ayuk and then you went after T. Higgins instead this offseason and you wanted to get better with the downfield style of wide receiver. But I have not heard any T. Higgins rumors, so I have no idea about that one. CSL says, which would likely be the better combination in this draft? Offensive line in the first round, defensive line in the second, or DL in the first and offensive line in the second, given the players likely available? Well, we haven't done enough work to really have built out our full board, but I will say it's the depth on the D line looks like it's pretty good. So the idea that the 49ers could get a pretty good end or defensive tackle if you don't need a specific type, like if you're okay with, it's like, okay, it might be a big body tackle, it might be a 3-tech, might be a big power end, might be a speed rusher. If you're okay with not getting to decide exactly what it is, but thinking there's going to be a player there for you, I would say probably D-line in the second round is looking like there's more depth. And it's just hard to find guys that are pure offensive tackles in this draft, especially. And in most drafts, we saw this last year. Finding those offensive tackles in the second round starts to get a little bit more difficult. Now, if you're looking for an interior offensive lineman, I'd say, okay, day 2 all day. There's going to be some options there because a lot of these guys are moving from tackle to guard. There's the North Dakota kid that looks like he might play center and is having a really nice week at the Senior Bowl. If you're trying to go that route and you weren't trying to add an offensive tackle, then I would say you go D-line in the first round. But again, I think it probably just comes down to who's the best player. If there's a stud defensive lineman, then you take him. And if there's an offensive tackle that's a no-doubter for you and you're iffy on the D lineman, then you go offensive tackle. And then you plan accordingly the rest of the way.
Well, I just have spent most of this year listening to San Francisco 49er fans blame losses on the offensive line. They're not blaming them on the defensive line. They're saying, hey, they're not protecting Purdy. So you're going to pay Purdy a lot of money in this offseason. You better be able to protect him and better have a plan to protect him moving forward. So I would say that, solidifying your offensive line with a tackle early on, as long as your guy is there, I don't see how you go any other direction. It just would have to be the guys we really like, they're gone. So then, go D-line in first round and then maybe O-line second round. But I don't think 49ers need a second round offensive lineman. Like, they need a stud. And they need a guy that when Trent Williams retires in a year or so is going to be a guy that's going to really hold down the blind side of your quarterback, Brock Purdy, who's going to be paid a lot of money this offseason.
What if the 49ers loved so much what they saw in 2024 rookie Dominic Pooney that they realized, oh, man, we might have accidentally just got a tackle of the future. He played guard last year. Maybe he kicks out and he's your offensive tackle. And then you're replacing interior guys instead. Instead of having Pooney be a long-term guard, maybe he's a tackle, and then you replace another guard for where Pooney is now currently.
I just think they have an opportunity to build on an offensive lineman. So if you really like Pooney, cool. We know we have a guard that we really like. All right, let's go get another player that we really like, in that first round. That's really talented. Instead of saying, all right, because you got Pooney. The value you're getting from Pooney right now is what you want to see from drafting a guard when they drafted him. Like, that's perfect. Oh, yeah, you just said it. Like, if it's interior line, I could wait to day 2. Well, they waited to day 2, got a guy, and he's played as well, if not maybe a little bit better at what they drafted him to be. So, heck nah, man. Like, you stay at guard. And if we draft a guy at pick 11, like, that's a guy that we want to be a stud somewhere else. It's got to be a tackle because can't really find tackles of this caliber in the second round.
All right, here we go from the chat. Michael Lombardi on the Pat McAfee show said, you put T. Higgins on a team like the 49ers, my Lord. Yeah, I don't know what Michael Lombardi's talking about there. Sure, it'd be fun. You put anybody, put Myles Garrett on the 49ers. Wow, look out. That'd be fun. You know what I mean? You could say that about anybody in the NFL, really. And by the way, Myles Garrett might want out of Cleveland. Blank check, man. Whatever you guys want. They can have that number 11 pick if they want it, man. Let's pair Myles Garrett.
Give it up. You give it up for Myles Garrett?
No doubt. I'd send him Brock Purdy for Myles Garrett. Dude. Yeah. Are you kidding me?
I would send pick 11 for sure for Myles Garrett. The money thing, okay, we got to figure that out with, he's going to be high paid. You got Bosa highly paid. But man, you talk about impact. All right, hey Bosa, Purdy, we weren't able to get you that tackle you wanted, but hey man, we got better defense. So maybe, the pressure won't be all on you to put up a bunch of points.
By the way, you could pay Myles Garrett and Sam Darnold for what you're about to pay just Brock Purdy. I'm just saying. It's not going to happen. It's just a fun talking point, but
that's when you start talking about like that. Now you're going to get me going. You're going to get me going.
Oh, man.
When I think about how much you're paying a quarterback and what the difference is and his impact on the game, that's where if Purdy would have figured out a way to win 9 games this year, then I may be like, man, yeah, now you got to pay him. But the fact that they couldn't figure it out, and it's just like, well, I think a lot of quarterbacks would have went 6-11 this season with it. Then it's like you're just like everybody else, but I could do that with Sam Darnold. And clearly, we just saw what Sam Darnold did with Minnesota. Didn't work out well the last couple games, but
yeah,
hey man, win 14 games. So what you're telling me is, if Sam Darnold's team is bad, he's probably going to be bad. If Sam Darnold's team is really good, he's probably going to look a lot better than what he looks like when his team isn't good. So is that a $30 million difference between quarterbacks? I take Myles Garrett and Sam Darnold as well.
Yeah, I just want to see Myles Garrett on the 49ers. He should have been there all along. The stupid Browns could not beat the Steelers in week 16 of the 2016 season, just hilariously fumbled away the game. It's going to stick with me. I'm watching this game. It's like literally fumbling the ball out of bounds and making a touchback when they could have scored a touchdown and won the game. Niners would have had the first pick. They would have had Myles Garrett all along. Last one here. Let's finish it up. From Bruce. Do you think Deebo will be here in week 1?
Yes. And my reasoning for that is I feel like 49ers hang on to a guy a year too long as opposed to getting rid of him a year too early. And there's Bill Belichick. That was his whole thing. That was his whole philosophy. Get rid of a guy a year early as opposed to a year too late. And I think the 49ers, they wait a little long for their guys. So.
Originally, that was the Bill Walsh thing. But Belichick did the same thing. Like Bill Belichick was ruthless. He let almost all of his free agents walk. Not all of them, but he let a lot of big-time free agents walk. And just kept rebuilding that thing and had a 20-year dynasty.
It helps when you have Tom Brady to kind of.
And that's, and that's where we're at with like, okay, you're going to pay your quarterback elite money. Well, that's what he is then, right? He should be that where you can build around that quarterback and you don't have to have the Avengers around him. But yeah, I agree. I think Deebo will be here week 1 just based on Kyle Shanahan's comments about not wanting to get rid of good players. All right. Thanks everybody for jumping in the live chat. Always fun doing this Q&A, and I'm glad you guys like it as well. So we should do it more often, and maybe we'll ramp it up a couple of times a week because there's so many different topics that we can cover in a rapid fire manner here. We're still going to be breaking down more and more prospects. I guess we got to get to Malachi Starks pretty soon here, Croc, and keep building our 2025 NFL Draft Locked On 49ers official big board. I just took a peek at our 2024 big board, by the way. And when the 49ers selected at 31, it was Cooper DeJean was 1 and Johnny Newton was 2 on our big board. And then I think next after that was Ladd McConkey. So those are our top 3 guys on the board at 31.
Well, definitely Ladd and Cooper had some good rookie years.
They did. Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Let us know you were here, and we will catch you Monday right here. Locked On 49ers.